welcome to our panel on jumping into careers in tech. I am Kim Mahan, and I am super grateful to be here with these amazing ladies who all have different and amazing stories of how they broke into the field, all self-taught. So for anyone that's out there who is, kind of starting that journey, hopefully you will find lots of nuggets, I think, from these amazing ladies. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in and let each of you introduce yourselves, and we'll start with like the really softball. So just introduce yourself, your name, a little bit about your background, and what you're doing now. So I'll rotate that around. Sherry, do you want to kick us off as our CWIT representative here?
I'm currently a project manager and software developer, and I kind of do a little bit of data science work for a local company called Alto Creative. And my background is that I entered software development from being a hydrologist. I modeled river systems. And prior to that, I was an ecologist for quite a while.
Very cool.
Sure. So my name is Trish Mahan.
Trish,
I'm a principal technologist at MAXX Potential. Find and develop people who are looking to get into the technical field without much experience or background. My background is I graduated college in sociology. I managed a food service restaurant, sort of worked at Panera for 10 years. I bartended for a little bit, and then I joined MAXX Potential as an apprentice. So I got on-the-job training to become a technologist.
Awesome. And so my name is Chazona Baum,
cool.
and I'm currently principal technologist at MAXX. So likewise, I do a lot of project management, technical and career coaching, things like that to help get folks that don't have the experience, the nudge that they need to get off to really nice careers. So I started college. I didn't graduate, actually ran out of funding. But so from there, I went off and did customer service type jobs, worked a lot of retail, food service, and spent a couple of years in the auto insurance industry. And then I, after a couple of years of being at home, raising my kids and tinkering again with the tech that I had loved for so long, I came to MAXX Potential, came up there as an apprentice, and now I'm here.
Very cool. Well, welcome all of you. So let's jump right in, and let's see, I'll try to rotate who I ask first each time. So first question, super easy. What initially sparked your interest in technology? So what appeals to you about this industry?
Yeah, so one of the most appealing things to me about this industry is the ability to continue learning. So there's always something new rolling out, always something to stay up to date with. I think my technology interest started young. I was sort of building websites when I was in elementary, middle school. I was supporting websites in high school. I've always been sort of around technology, and I just love the ability that I get to continue learning each day.
Very cool. Chazona, how about you? What initially appealed to you? Why did you start trying to learn to code?
So as a kid, I was definitely on the nerdier side. I was the kind who would read the encyclopedia and drive my parents crazy, telling them that actually this was the correct thing. They were wrong about something. Learned against that later. But for me, it was like the combination of always having something new to learn about and explore and build, like never being done with it, combined with the freedom and the being able to take nothing and make it into something. So like I've always been into creative things, writing, music, things like that. So being able to, back in the Wild West of the web when there wasn't Facebook and Instagram, owning everything people create, creating GeoCities pages and MySpace profiles was just really fun and exhilarating for me.
Very cool. And it never stops changing. Sherry, how about you? What originally, you went from ecology to technology. So, yeah, what sparked your
I guess I should
interest?
take a step back. In grad school, I did a lot of sort of data science modeling of climatic variables. And so when I moved to Charlottesville as a hydrologist, I joined local women in tech groups to continue learning programming languages coming from the data science side. And they kind of encouraged me to take a boot camp. And so I kind of vetted the scene and interviewed a lot of local companies, thought that it was an opportunity that I could then integrate back into science. And then I sort of kind of fell in love with it and saw how I could work for a company that might contribute to science but still do tech. So I can kind of see tech morphing back and forth for me with my science background.
Yeah, it's something that kind of integrates into every industry as the backbone. Well, following up on that, Sherry, like, so you got your start, because that was going to be my next question. So once you knew you were interested, then how that first, like, get your foot in the door. And I kind of know Trish and Chazona's like first door opening, but for you, Sherry, like, talk a little bit more about your boot camp experience. So when you first signed up, how that felt when you were taking that first step.
A master's degree in science, and like any sort of career change moving forward as a scientist, I would need like a PhD or some other like giant credential that would take years and years. Being able to enter the tech field with just a boot camp or just learning to code on your own and showing a great portfolio was super appealing to me. So I did a boot camp full-time remote. It took me about 5 months. And before doing the boot camp, I really vetted the local scene, and thanks to Elaine, I was able to meet with a lot of local companies, and they were all like, yes, we take boot camp grads. You don't need a master's or PhD in tech to get a degree. So yeah, that's kind of how I did it.
But that had to be a tough choice, though. So to go full time, so
Absolutely.
stopping all other work so you could really focus on the learning.
That would have kept me very safe and secure for the rest of my life. And it was quite a risk, but I knew I could always integrate and go back to that field with these amazing skills.
Very cool. How about you, Chazona? That first coming into Career Lab, or even before Career Lab, you were already kind of out and about in the tech community.
I'm back.
Uh-oh. Did we lose your sound?
So especially having worked a lot of customer service jobs, I'd already been exposed to the types of problems that went on and not being able to really do anything about them. Everything kept harkening back to the kinds of things that I had done back in high school and college. So when I had the time, when I was at home just with the kids, I went back into things. Free Code Camp had started up. It made a lot more access to resources available. And so I started building things on my own and trying to look for other people who were doing the same thing. So where I lived at the time at Lothian, they didn't have any meetups there, so I made one so I could bring my kids with me. And it was kind of cool. We had like 20 people each meet. It was great. So when I moved back home where family was, likewise continued to go to a lot of meetups on interesting topics, things like that. Just to expose myself to more information, more content, which is part of how I heard about the apprenticeship program in the first place. Actually heard in the Richmond area as well as down here from different people, and hearing these, it's not too good to be true perspectives about this model in the first place, that like you could learn how to do something, get paid while you're doing it, which for me was crucial. I was living on $400 a month in child support. So being able to drop everything and pay somebody to learn this just wasn't going to be possible. So I went for the apprenticeship, and thankfully, luck and hard work combined to get me the opportunity that I have now.
Very cool. And Trish, how was that first experience? So when you finally decided to act on the interest, was it intimidating when you first joined MAXX?
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't intimidated, scared to make the jump. I had, known one thing for 10 years, and jumping into anything new is scary. But I think the very first experience with technology, my first project at MAXX, was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed work for one of the first times in my working life. So I jumped in, took the dive, and I appreciated that MAXX, paid to learn as well as, get work done for our customers. So it was a great model, and I felt very fortunate to learn about it pretty early on in MAXX Potential's history.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, how about for each of you, like personal projects? So outside of work, so everybody's working in the field now, but what do you do on the side, in terms of personal tech projects, passion stuff? And let's see, we'll start this one. Let's go back
on
to
the side.
Sherry.
I actually mostly manage an insect farm out of my house. So we grow insects for animal feed and hopefully eventually human consumption. So that's kind of my passion project that keeps me very focused at work on tech and on the side on other things.
Yeah, very cool. So you take a break, unplugging a little bit. Trish, how about you? So personal projects, you've got personal projects that are non-tech related, and then also personal tech projects.
Yeah, I have a good mix of
might be of interest
personal
to others.
projects outside of work. I do a lot of tech projects, so I really like, building things to help automate my life. I think, the more lazy I can be day in and day out, because I built technology to control my life for me, the better my quality of life will be. The extra episode of Big Bang Theory I get to watch that week. So I, from tracking weather and allergy, like the allergy counts, I've built apps to send me a message when I need to take my medicine. I just love automating my life.
Definitely.
Cool.
I would.
And Chazona,
I would agree
how about
there,
you?
Pretty strongly as far as trying to automate and get some time back. So like my tech personal project right now is building kind of a recipe management meal planning app for myself and my family. If you've used these before, you may notice that it's really common to find great ones that are good for single people and couples. But when you add in kids who eat a different amount of food and who may have picky things that they won't eat that don't happen to be a food allergen, it's really hard to find something that actually fits. So that's what I'm currently working on. But honestly, I dig into anything that's creative, whether it's tech related, whether it's like textiles and just like building things.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm going to switch over to something that if we've got folks out there that are trying to either keep their skills sharp or just get started, it's a topic that I'm sure all of you have at some point done a tutorial of sort out there. Could you, I'm going to start with Sherry. Could you start a little bit, like, how do you know that you are choosing the right thing? So when you're going to get started, you started with a boot camp where there's a structured kind of curriculum, but if it keeps changing and you're learning on your own, how do you navigate? How do you know which tutorials to use, which languages to try to
I guess
work on?
for me,
how do you think about that?
I only do tutorials if it sort of leads to a bigger goal. So like a certificate in data science or something like that. Unless I'm just trying to solve a problem day to day, and then I'm looking at a tutorial like that. But I won't normally look at numerous tutorials and stay on that track. That's why the boot camp was good for me. I kind of always needed like an end goal and someone kind of keeping track of what I was doing, and a big community to ask questions to. So yeah, I guess if I were to just look for a few tutorials and I was starting out, I would probably ask within the local Slack channels for best recommendations.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming out there. There's the free co-camp and there's, Udacity and Coursera and Udemy. So Chazona, how about you? How do you feel about kind of that sea of learning resources out there? How do you navigate
I'll admit,
that
I'm
and
a pretty
choose what you spend
person.
your time
on? So like when I was getting back into sewing, everyone normally starts with like a pillowcase or a cushion. I started by building myself a set of shorts. So the same kind of thing applies normally to how I've learned tech and code in particular. I always started with some kind of a project, and it was always something that I was like, I don't know how I'm going to actually complete this start to finish. And so that required me to then be able to break things down into, okay, what are the pieces, what are the chunks, what are the steps that I need to follow in order to actually get this done? And then what resources can help me to accomplish the various steps. And that's kind of what helped me, because then instead of, oh, how do I navigate this sea of resources? It's really more about, okay, how do I cultivate the resources that help me accomplish this set thing? And I might need, one piece of a tutorial from this tutorial and a piece from a different tutorial. And so I'm not actually reading through the entire thing. Again, I was impatient, but I found it really helpful for me, and it worked really well. So like the stuff that I was doing, my sister was having her baby. So like I would build things like her baby shower site where people could RSVP and put what kinds of foods they were going to eat and go do her baby registries and things like that, or a site for her to share photos, invitation only with people so that she wasn't putting them on Facebook. Like it always had some kind of a bigger project behind it. And ideally something that I cared about enough to finish.
Yep. That's great advice. So I think that's common. So having some sort of goal in mind, not the tutorial for the tutorial's sake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trish, is that consistent with you too?
Those sentiments. I compare it to building a piece of furniture from IKEA. So you get an IKEA furniture, you get a set of instructions, you sort of follow those instructions to finish that project. But then you've like sort of learned a little bit about how pieces fit together. Maybe the next piece of furniture, you don't need those instructions any longer, is one way to think about it. So I use the tutorials very much for passion projects of mine.
Right. So nobody is weighing in saying this is the best one to go to. It's really whichever one helps you for what you're trying to do at the time. I think that's solid advice, or at least resonates with me as well. Do you think for each of you, and let's see, I'll start with Chazona on this one, that you did anything differently to give you an edge? So like, yeah, like going to the meetups, the networking, like what do you think is
absolutely? I think there were like three things that I noticed, even like since now I'm doing a lot of coaching of other people that are getting their start into the industry. There's like three things that I've noticed like consistently that I did differently that helped me, and that others that are generally getting to their goals a lot faster are also doing. And it generally did align with one, the networking and the meetups. And it wasn't around, oh, so that I can, get a job offer from someone, or so I can receive some benefit. It was always more a matter of, I like to geek out over technical things, and I'd like to talk to other people who are adults who also like to geek out over technical things. And so going to these things and then building natural relationships and seeing where I could contribute, where I could help out, which also could then build reputational karma, like not in a opportunistic kind of a way, but it does help over time, because then most of us, we got in got in the door with some kind of a help. So we want to try to pay it forward and help others who we know are also decent people that are trying to get their start as well. But I would say consistently building things all the time, or trying to break things apart, if that's what we're trying to do, like consistently practically doing something and taking ownership of my career direction are some of the big things that I think also made a difference. Not looking at it in terms of, well, I'm going to go take a class and someone's going to hand me everything I need to know, or I'm going to, like, everything I'm going to need is going to be in this particular project. I spent a lot of time outside of work learning and building the skills that I wanted, and trying to make sure that I set difficult goals for myself and knew what I needed to accomplish them.
Solid advice. Sherry, how about you? So like coming out of the boot camp, you clearly had a number of other classmates. Are there any secrets, things that you feel like helped you stand out when you were applying for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
That first job coming out of the boot camp.
Before I made the switch and before I enrolled in boot camp, I had networked with a bunch of local companies, And they were the ones actually reaching out to me when I finished boot camp, and I didn't even have to apply to any jobs. So that networking before even making that decision, when I had zero real ability in software development, really has helped me throughout this whole period of time. And I've joined like every single like local tech group, tried them out, saw which ones were the best fit and that I could feel like I could give back to as well. And then also having very strong mentors that also reached out to me. I honestly, tech has been so just embracing, especially compared to my experience in science. I've found so many women who just want to help us out. So it's never been quite that difficult to find people to help you get from point A to point B.
Very good. And we're going to come back to that point in 1 second. I want to flip this a little bit though for Trish, just because I think it'd be similar. So at MAXX, you lead our talent selection process at MAXX, and we're constantly hiring people with no experience. What differentiates, like, what is it that we're looking for? What are those things that give an applicant an edge? Because it's never going to be they have XYZ experience. We're looking for other things. There you are. But what is that? What gives one applicant an edge versus another? Like, what are those core traits aside from values that we're looking for?
I'm really looking for the passion in someone who is so passionate about this challenge of getting into tech, about the tech, about learning and building their own projects to continue to develop their skills. And it's really easy to read passion with any project being presented our way. So a lot of people nowadays have their sort of personal portfolio of projects. It's very easy to tell the difference between a project you did to pass a tutorial from a project that you did because you cared about what you were learning. So that's one key differentiator, if I could give anything, is make sure you care about the stuff you're learning. That's the best way to get in.
Very cool. Awesome. So I'm going to go back to Sherry's previous comment and just dig a little deeper, because that topic is of interest. And so, and especially given, I mean, why are we even having a Women in Tech Summit? I think it's a well-known fact that our numbers are not there, like there are fewer women in this industry. But could you talk about your experiences as a woman so far when you're going to these meetups? Like, have you experienced anything holding you back just because you're a woman in tech? And I'll start with Sherry, and then we'll go back around. I'll go in the order
when
you
I
want.
have
So
gone
Sherry,
to meetups
Chazona,
where it's majority male, I've actually been pretty embraced, whether it's acknowledged or not acknowledged like everyone else, but treated pretty equally, and encouraged. And then sometimes if there's that lone woman in the crowd, we connect instantly. But I also have kind of gravitated towards the more women-dominated tech meetups, just to have those kinds of role models and mentors, and maybe ease of conversation that I've found more comfortable for myself.
Yep. At work, do you notice any difference? Like, do you feel like you're treated different from your male peers?
So at the last company I worked at,
or not,
which was quite large, 150 people, not treated any differently. And then my current company, where there's just 5 of us, it's a woman-owned business actually in tech, which is also pretty rare. I'm very happy to work for that, and definitely not treated any differently at all. And we're all quite a great team, and it's really nice to have. I think we have 3 women to 2 men, so it's awesome.
Very cool. Chazona, how about you? Experienced any of the programmer culture or anything that you feel like
my
rubs you the wrong way
been
being a woman in this field?
It's been so varied based on like when and where we're even talking about. So I will say I had about a 10-year gap between when I was initially digging into a lot of technical things and was interested in pursuing that direction. And it was college, and it was 10 years ago. So it was a lot more programmer. I mean, even if you were programming, but you were programming in PHP, that was the greatest sin to be had. I imagine because WordPress was becoming so popular with women trying to learn tech. So I won't go so far as to try to claim that like no one ever has these kinds of experiences, because I've had some. But I will say most of the experiences that I've had that have been not great because I'm a woman have been in other fields outside of tech. So like in the service industry, for example, I would hands down recommend a woman go into tech versus like the service industry, where the power dynamics are just so skewed. What I've seen from here has been, if anything, so welcoming, so like either not caring whether you're a man or a woman, or if anything, kind of like veering towards the opposite, where it's like I have less insecurity about not belonging and more insecurity about, did I earn everything that I got? And so I'll know, like Kim knows, like she'll see me like do certain things where I'm like, it's like I'm so used to working twice as hard to get half as far that like I force myself into that zone just to make sure I've earned everything that I've got. To make sure I didn't like, well, we got a token woman and she's Latino and she's fitting this little bubble for us. It's like, no, I'm here because I'm into the tech and it's something that I have some degree of skill at. And as far as meetups go, definitely I like to be involved with women's meetups, especially because I understand, having been there 10 years ago, that representation does matter. And if I had actually encountered a single woman who was in this field, that might have changed my perspectives back in a time when I didn't have a solid sense of self. So I want to be able to contribute that for other people. But I will say that mixed gender meetups have generally been better for me as a mom who sees more of a motherhood penalty right now than a woman penalty. So like if I'm going to a women's meetup, a lot of times they're not even considering that those of childbearing age who have had children that are young are actively going to be participating. So I'm chasing down my kids in the meetups. Whereas if I go to the mixed gender ones, the men will actually talk to my boys about robots and stuff so that I can actually listen to what's going on at a meetup. Like I don't ever expect it, but I felt more included by the men at these meetups than I've ever been in the women's meetups.
Yeah. Very, very spot on. And as someone who goes to cybersecurity conferences, I'm always like grateful because I never have to wait in line for the bathroom. So ever. Trish, how about you? So you've also been involved a lot of mixed, like you've been involved in planning, like the RVA JavaScript conference, and kind of gone deep. And that is probably a predominantly male conference. Ever experienced anything either positive or negative?
I don't think so. I mean,
in that community?
I have always just typically fit in much better with the guys than with since high school. I've always just been one of the dudes in the room, and I got used to that pretty early on. So I don't know, I would be blind to it if anything was going on, because I'm just comfortable with it. I love the conference that we run. I work with a great group of guys there. I've worked with the Women Who Code in Richmond group, as well as recently the RVA Tech Drive conference presented by RVA Tech Women, and feel just as comfortable in those rooms. I don't notice anything.
Awesome. Well, I've got two more quick ones and then some backups, but I want to also make sure we leave time. So we've got 13 minutes. I want to make sure we leave time in case there are audience questions. But two other topics that I think are related. Could you talk, each of you, and we'll start with Chazona this time, the importance of mentors or sponsors, like either the difference between the two? Have you had any? Do you think that that's important for someone aspiring to break in the field?
For one, I would say, if anything,
taking
advantage of mentors, coaches, and sponsors, all three are like really crucial to one, getting into the field that you're going to actually want to be in for a long time, but two, reducing some of the barriers getting in. I feel like on the mentoring side, just to clarify, so mentoring is more someone who's been there, kind of sharing more of their experience, their pitfalls, like things to avoid, and kind of best practices. So hopefully you can make different mistakes than they made. Coaching generally is going to be a little bit more maybe like mirroring your thought patterns back to you, and challenging you to think differently or to grow in a way that you might not have expected. Asking you more questions. And then sponsoring is generally going to be kind of seeing the potential in you, and putting a little bit of their reputational cred on the line, saying, I think this person can do XYZ work, even though that's probably going to be a stretch for them. And I feel like all three are really vital. The sponsorship in particular has been really big for me. I've experienced that just in terms of being an apprentice and even getting into the position that I'm in right now, because it honestly was one where I had done a lot of work to earn it, but it was still largely betting on potential when I went in, and definitely more of a stretch goal. But had I not had that stretch put in front of me, I never would have achieved or surpassed it. So I think that's really important as well, because a lot of times we'll set our sights. So like they say, like, set your sights on the moon and you'll land in the stars. Like a lot of times we'll think that the stars are the moon because they're glowing so brightly. When a sponsor can actually see there's further things out there in the universe that you don't even know about.
Very cool. Sherry, how about you? Do you have any mentors, sponsors, coaches that have been
I guess my main
important in your journey so far?
Is like a CTO from a local, a national nonprofit. And I kind of connected with her before boot camp. And she's helped guide me along my journey, even when things were maybe tough for me, sort of expecting myself to be at the level I was as a scientist after a year in software, stuff like that, imposter syndrome, taking the right job for myself and negotiating salary, making sure that some of the things that I was being pitched with each company were accurate, and how to weed out sort of the different offerings that we might get. And so I had a pretty concentrated plan with her to meet like once every month while I was in boot camp. And then after that, it was sort of less and less. And now I meet with her more as a friend, and then we talk about sort of tech. But people like this have really, really helped me make the right decisions for myself.
How did you start that relation? Did you just ask, or just telling people raise their hand and say,
in other fields, or at least I haven't experienced it? But she had kind of approached me at a local Girl Develop It meetup, and she asked if I needed a mentor, and I was like, I would love one. I thought you were like this big shot, and how would you ever have the time? And she gets like thousands of emails a day, and she still emails me back when I need it.
Yep.
So yeah, she just makes it happen, and pays it forward just like others have done for her.
Trish, how about you? You have some mentors out kind of in the community. Like, have you found that to be helpful? Just having more senior mentor,
I believe the more insight you
out
can absorb from others, the more you can feed your own personal growth. It's definitely helpful to have mentors out there. I will say one piece of advice I learned pretty early on was that don't let mentor sound as formal of a relationship as it does. So I have mentors on Twitter that I follow that don't even know that they're my mentors, but they give a lot of great thought out there that is useful, and I reflect on it, and it helps build some of my decision-making processes. So it doesn't have to be a formal one-on-one relationship necessarily. It can be someone who has no clue you are their mentor. I would also add, it's never too early to start being a mentor. So I think you can get a lot out of teaching someone else, or sharing your ideas with someone else, because then they're opening their world experiences. Even if you don't know a lot, you probably know something more than someone else who's looking for help to get into the field.
A lot of working together. Awesome. Well, I want to pause real quick just because we have, like I said, I do have a few backups, but are there any questions out there in the audience for these ladies? So we have one in from Joanna, which this could be, I think maybe start with Sherry. what are some of the other tech meetups besides CWIT and Shift Enter? Because I believe there could be some that are like geographic, but there's also probably some larger ones
so
that everybody might
locally
be
in Charlottesville,
so Sherry.
okay. So there's Code for Charlottesville, which I find super amazing. They do open source work for nonprofits. It's freaking awesome. They're just like creating solutions for community problems. And then there's a JavaScript meetup. There's the Women Who Code in R. That was like the first one I joined. There's quite a few meetups with UVA. I know that there used to be a machine learning meetup. I'm not sure that they meet much right now. I could probably, if Joanna, you want to write back to me, I can actually compile it. There's quite a list, and I think Charlottesville Women in Tech has that. There's numerous meetups locally, but one thing that COVID has really taught us is that virtual meetups are amazing, and I have recently been joining an Ithaca meetup on IoT. So it's freaking awesome, and you can really join any meetup right now because everything is virtual. You can go all over the country, and the people that aren't joining them are crazy because they're awesome, and it's just so convenient. You're in your house. So.
Absolutely, great advice, Trish. Any suggestions out there, virtual ones people can go to?
I mean, I would just say meetup.com, browse tech. Like you'll find dozens, if not hundreds, out there. So there's several meetups I followed. I was, of course, involved with the Women Who Code Richmond group. So I'm very close to that group. RVAJS exists, but again, like Sherry said, there's tons out there. They're all virtual right now. So why not join them? Why not go across the country in a night and have a happy hour with someone in California, and next day go learn something about IoT from someone in Wisconsin.
Yep, and as Jessie just mentioned in the chat, like she's actually in Tennessee, not Charlottesville, which I agree. I think COVID is kind of breaking down geographic barriers pretty darn quick. So Chazona, how about you? Any that you're regularly attending? So because actually now I think like 757 color coded is actually virtual.
So most of the ones in our area are also all virtual right now as well. I would say also even for when we do potentially have more face-to-face interaction as well, meetups don't have to be super formal. So like one of the meetups that I go to all the time, and it's available virtually, it's a 757 developers late night coders group. And it's literally a guy set it up because he has insomnia issues. And so he's up late every night because he can't sleep. And so he started this meetup, and that was actually the first meetup that I started regularly attending very much because it was after the kids went to bed. So it was the most accessible one for me to go to and actually talk and enjoy people's company. When I was in Midlothian, it was a suburban / rural community outside of Richmond. There were no meetups there. So like we just made one, and we met at the library. Libraries are happy to have groups meet for free. If it gets people patronizing the library, that's a good thing. So I would just say not to be too scared that meetups are this big formal thing, kind of like mentorship. Like it's not this big formal thing that you need to be scared of. So if you don't see what you need, go make it.
Ooh, that's a good way. Awesome. I think Kim may be so here to like bring down the timer on the timer. But that's a great closing line though. So like just don't be afraid. Go and like make it. Put yourself out there a little bit, and I think the community will be more than welcoming. If I could sum up what I heard from our amazing panelists. So so Kim, any parting words?
I do want to remind folks that the next sessions are probably up and ready for you to join. And we're just so grateful that you all shared your stories. Very inspirational, and I think a lot of good takeaways. So thank you.
And anyone out there, we do have a list just from MAXX of other places to go to learn and find projects. So if anyone wants to connect with me or any of the panelists, I think we're happy to share more sites and resources. So very cool. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Yep. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep.